So welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, Dara. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
You're very welcome. So Dara, tell us about you. What's your story and what is a forgiveness teacher?
Well, a forgiveness teacher, I guess you could say I teach people how to move forward. Um, and so my story, it begins in two different places. So I'd like to give you the how I was brought up briefly, just so that you understand the context of where I'm coming from with all of this. So my father was atheist, my mother was agnostic, and my mother was the youngest of 12 in a Catholic family. And when she was a child, she questioned Catholicism and was reprimanded for it. So she raised my sister and I to be seekers, she wasn't going to have us believe anything unless we found it true for ourselves. And I had all these Catholic aunts and uncles orbiting our family, constantly telling her that she was making a huge mistake and that she needed to get us confirmed and First Communion and Sunday school and all of that. So, and she just had this very strong boundary, like, nope, 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 these two, I'm raising them to be seekers. So at paralleling this is I'm truly born a very spiritual little girl. And so if religion could explain to me what this feeling was that I feel like I was born with, of something bigger than what was actually happening in front of me, I wanted to know what it was. So as a compromise, she got me a children's Bible, and I was very excited to read it. I must have been 9 or 10 years old. I sat down, it had all these beautiful pictures and big letters, and it was illustrated. And I started reading it, and I got through the creation stories and into some of the deeper stories where God had an angry voice, as depicted in this children's Bible. He was harsh, he was punitive, he was not nice. And it so was in contrast to the feeling that I had felt, since I was, becoming conscious as a human being on the planet. I had this different feeling. So I remember closing the book and saying, like, oh, from this point forward, I'm going to be spiritual, but not religious. And so you could say that I'm super spiritual, but not religious, because super spiritual, but not religious is on a spectrum where some people are just like, well, there's got to be something more here. I can't say there isn't. So you can call me spiritual, but not religious. And then there's, on the other side of the spectrum, there's people like me who are like, actually, I take my spirituality very seriously, but I just belonging to an organized religion doesn't connect me to it. So I need to be on my own. So that's what I did. And so for 2 decades, I have 2 degrees in psychology. I studied psychology and spirituality, and I became fascinated with what actually healed people. I truly wanted to know. And so being in the realm of psychology and spirituality, new healing modalities were constantly crossing my path. And I would, take each of them very seriously and really study them and scrutinize them. Like, how is this healing? Who is this healing to? So like, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, yoga therapy, meditation. Like I have my graduate degree is in Buddhism and psychology. So I really, as my mother brought me up to be, I really just sought and sought and sought to find answers for myself. So with 2 decades of this behind me, in the early 2000s, I entered into a business partnership. I had this idea for a business. I got business partners, and the business took off, but the partnerships ended up being incompatible. And we kind of endured each other for as long as we possibly could because the business was thriving. But then suddenly everything fell apart, and there was definitely a lot of layers of deceit behind it, and I lost my part in the business. So I was half relieved because it had been a stressful relationship, and the other part of me was very upset that I had lost this thing that was so dear to my heart. So, but I thought, okay, I have 2 decades of psychology and spirituality behind me. I can get through this. Like I can process my emotions. I can recreate my life. I can focus on gratitude. I have, a lot of blessings around me constantly. Like, I will move forward, and really had no doubt that, like, with time, I would move forward. And 3 years later, I found that I was actually really still stuck with what happened. And so over that 3 years, I had a old, wise woman friend who kind of watched the whole thing unfold. And so maybe like every 6 to 9 months, her and I would talk about it. And I would just say all my frustrations about what had happened. And she would listen to me and give me lots of empathy and compassion. And she would end the conversation with, Dara, you might want to consider forgiveness. And I remember being so irritated every time she made that suggestion, because first I would be like, did you just hear what I just said? Like, like, didn't you just like hear this whole drama I just laid out before you? Like, how in the world is forgiveness the answer to this problem? Justice is the answer to this problem. That was the thought I would have in my head. And then the second thing that I recoiled was that I had had this, as far as I was concerned, I had lost this thing that was very dear to my heart. So just for some reason, because the word give was in the word, like, it just made me feel like I needed to give more. And that just repelled me. Like, I'm not giving another thing to this situation. I already gave enough. So her and I had that conversation like 3 times over the course of that 3 years. So 3 years to the month, I found myself sliding into a mystery illness of insomnia, fatigue, lots of anxiety, and I have 2 young children and a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, depending on me, and none of the doctors can figure out what's wrong with me. And I start to get very afraid, and I start to fear that, like, something, that I'm not going to be able to parent my children. And so all my anxiety just makes all the symptoms worse. And I'm a very intuitive person, and so I had, uh, well, my intuition is especially strong when I'm very, very upset for whatever the reason. I think a lot of people might have that experience. And so anyway, I was becoming very, very upset. And so I said, okay, like, I need the universe to guide me on this. Like, I am freaked out to my core. And so I did kind of like a prayer and a ritual. And I said, whatever you want me to do, I will do. You just say it, whatever it is. I just need you to show me out of here. And the message I got back was forgive. And, once again, my reaction was like, oh, like anything but that.
So,
But
so, so that's how you arrived at the forgiveness path. That's
right. But the
right.
message got really,
Okay.
really, really strong.
Mhm.
And so in that moment, I thought, okay, I accept this mission, but I have no idea how to do it. So I Googled how to forgive. And what I realized in that moment is that 95% of what came up, this was in 2012, was why someone should forgive, not how to forgive. And then when someone did ask on like some forums, but how do you do it? The response would be, you just do it. And so I needed directions. I was like, I don't even understand this. You just do it. Like, that just feels completely impossible to me. I was like, I need a step by step. And so in that moment, I thought, all right, I'm going to have to make it myself. And I have 2 years of 2 decades of psychology and spirituality behind me. Like, I can figure this out. So that was what brought me to the path.
Okay, wow. What an interesting story. So how you said you went on Google and you kind of type in, what is forgiveness? So how do you define forgiveness for you? Um, how is it different from mainstream understanding of forgiveness?
Right. So the mainstream understanding of forgiveness is pardoning, ceasing anger, having compassion, and letting go.
Mhm.
And I define forgiveness as the ability to apply unconditional love. And so unconditional love, God's love, the love of the goddess, the heavens, however you want to name it, at the core of all benevolent spiritual paths and religions are the teachings of unconditional love. So however you access that, so the ability to apply it, and then the second part of definition, and this is kind of like the main trick, is your ability to identify exactly what needs it.
Mhm. When you say what needs it, you mean like what part or area of your life that needs the forgiveness?
Well, so obviously, if there's like a big rupture or a big strong circumstance in someone's life,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's obviously it's that circumstance that needs it.
Mm-hmm.
However, our bodies are actually speaking to very specific themes that were affected by what happened. So like this strong thing happens in somebody's life, and to cope with that strong thing, there's like different beliefs, thoughts, behaviors that arise out of that. And so it's the ability to identify what those things are and apply unconditional love to them.
Wow. So, where can the listeners get in touch with you? What services do you offer? And are you planning to write a book about forgiveness in the future?
So, no, I'm not. I mean, who knows what will happen in the future? But I've been studying the phenomena of forgiveness for 12 years now. And I teach a 6-week online course that walks people through these steps. And my goal, after I walked through the path of forgiveness and came out the other side, I had two thoughts. I had one was, wow, forgiveness is for real. In growing up with a Catholic family, I had heard about it my entire life. So this thing that I had heard about my entire life that really does help people return to inner peace
Mm.
is legitimate, right? Even though prior to that, I had a lot of like skepticism and like confusion about it as a healing modality. So it immediately wowed me and got my respect as a healing modality. And so my goal for people taking the course is at the end of the course, I want them to say that. I want them to say, whoa, this thing is for real. Like forgiveness is, a true healing modality. So, and how that swings back to, will I write a book? I feel like there's way too much talking about forgiveness. There's way too many words about forgiveness. Everybody is telling other people to let go and just forgive and just do it and have compassion. And I feel like it's very a conceptual thing that's happening. But the actual, like, how do you restore inner peace to your body? How do you use this force to restore inner peace to your body is a body-based experience. So that's what I want to give people. I want to give people a real, true experience that they're like, oh, wow, I don't want to keep people up here in like definitions and words, if that makes sense.
So, when you do the course that you have, when you get people through it, is it kind of like a counseling, kind of walking them through the different steps of forgiveness, or do you have different steps for forgiveness to get them to the point where they're completely relaxed with themselves and they're
Right.
completely.
So it's 6 weeks. And so I teach them 6 different things. And so the first thing is I teach them how to have an embodied experience of unconditional love.
Okay.
And some people have that experience like I do, just it's a very spiritual experience. Like I feel it. I was born feeling it. And
Mhm.
some people experience it through the love of their families or through the love of nature or through the love of some passion. Or like, I know that you are an artist and very creative. Like that might be the place where it's very strong for you, where you feel, so I want people to identify where it is it's showing up in their life, because I feel like unconditional love is a very spiritual love. And as again, it comes through to us in different ways. I, very much want to say that this being on earth is a conditional experience. Right? It just
Right.
is. And I see a lot of people grapple with like supposed to have unconditional love in their marriages and supposed to have unconditional love in certain relationships. And I want to say like that's not true. You can access unconditional love and apply it to those situations, but we are in the human realm, and the human realm is about conditions. And so unconditional love is like a medicine. So I want people to understand how to access that medicine. And the second thing I teach them is how to apply it. The third thing I teach them is how to move stuck energy in their body, because often it's like you can apply unconditional love, but if you have a lot of stuck energy in your body, it's not going to be able to flow like a river, which is how you want it to flow. Then the fourth thing I teach them is how to identify the specific aspects that are unique to their situation that actually need the unconditional love also. And that is like a really awesome, super high-minded, countercultural thing to teach people. So I take 2 sessions to really, really make sure they got that. And then the final session is we bring it all together. You know, it's I teach them how to play all these instruments, and then it's like, okay, now let's create music.
Wow, that's so nice. I would love to take this course. So tell us, what is your website?
So my website is howtoforgive.com, which is what I typed in that night when I thought, I need to know how to forgive, you know, I typed in how to forgive. And so that's the website, howtoforgive.com. And the next course is September 15th. I'm not sure when you're going to publish this interview, but I offer the course once every season. And so the next one comes up September 15th, and the registration closes on September 12th. And it goes until October 24th. And then it happens again in January.
Okay. So how many times a year it happens? Like 3 times?
4. 3 or 4, yeah.
For every quarter, okay. So if you have any last words for the listeners on the power of forgiveness, what would you say to them in order for them to go ahead and live their best life?
I would say that you do not have to endure emotional burdens, that we are anatomically designed to regenerate and to heal. And we just, especially in Western culture, there's just so much emphasis on developing our ability to do and accomplish and, you know, succeed in life, right? And there's not enough on like actually using all the superpowers of our souls. Like we truly are born with these abilities. So that's one thing I would want them to know. And if I could give them like a first step, I would want them to pay attention to where do they feel unconditional love in their daily lives? You know, is it through spiritual practice? Is it through relationships, families, nature, creativity, passions? Maybe it's for themselves. Like, what is it in this human existence that they're unconditional about? Because there is something.
Well, nicely said, Dara. Well, thank you, Dara, for being on Beauty of Colors podcast.
Thank you for having me, Cleanna. I really appreciate it.